Welcome back to Just Your Average Joel podcast. We're going to talk about everything your mother said not to talk about in polite company. Politics, religion, religion and politics, politics and religion, and yes, we are going to talk about God. So I'm going to give you Joel. He'll start us off. He is an ordinary guy who had an extraordinary experience. And, you know, there's a saying in the 12-step program that it's an experience you don't want to miss. But a lot of people are missing it, and we're trying to get down to the reason why. And I give you Joel.
We got a show for you today. We're going to talk more about the history, more just what Jen led up to, too, just what we were just talking about. What's happening? What's missing? You know, it's like, what are we doing here? Why is the recovery rate so low? Why are people not being transformed? Now, when we get into the big book of Alcoholics, their basic text, but what the object, and I've been talking about this for weeks, is enlightenment. It's about a conversation. It's about a relationship. They turn around and say, this is not a religion. Well, this isn't a religious organization. And what do? The people that are saying that are making this into a religion. Come here. Let's do outside things and ritualistic things and worship other things rather than God in a relationship and a transformation. So they're doing a lot of outside things, not a lot of inside things. The book, how this is laid out, and how the founders, right, and how a lot of the people in the beginning, what the intent, because intent is everything. You know, even when you're going through the steps, just so you know, intent, why you're doing things is important. I'm just doing this you're doing it to establish a relationship with God. That's why we're doing this, because my relationship with myself and before is non-existent, and it's not worth living. So I got to find another way of life, and that's what this path is. I want to turn this over to Jen about a lot of the history that we talked about. History, why, what's going on here? What is going on in some of the stuff that was and now is not. What do you got, Jen, on some of this stuff?
Okay, so yes, I've been doing a deep dive, reading the history. I've read William James' Variety of Religious Experience, Not God by Ernie Kurtz, the writing of the Big Book, the creation of the Big Book, and a couple other books, you know, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, a couple of the mainstream books. And to the best of my knowledge, what I can see happened is, you know, first of all, Bill had a religious experience. It was a religious experience. And when Ebby came to see him that night at his apartment, I found something out, doing a little bit of a deep dive in the books, which is not often talked about. When Ebby came to Bill, he had been at the Oxford group, and that was a religious organization. And in Bill's story, he talks about, you know, Ebby came to him and he said he used to be an alcoholic crackpot. Now he's cracked on religion. Would I have it? Of course I would. I had no other choice. Bill had a lot of old ideas about religion. He was very prejudiced about religion. He was a intellectual type of guy. He really I would say worship more science and intellect. He had a lot of old ideas about religion, but he was desperate. He was in a lot of pain. So when Ebby left that night, one of the things that's not talked about is that Bill went to the Calvary Church that Ebby had been to, and he actually gave his life to Christ. That they had a call, and Bill went up and he gave his life to Christ, and he, you know, put himself in the town's hospital the next day, and that's when he had his what he called the hot flash or the white light experience. So I guess what I'm noticing is Bill had this religious experience and he wanted to go out and save all the drunks, which is indicative of having a religious experience. Very common. You see people, they get sober and they want to shout it from the rooftops. They want to become drug and alcohol counselors. They want to go out and they want to help people, and that's what happened to Bill. And you know, I think the problem is that Bill was met with a lot of people. You had Hank Parkhurst, you had Jim Burwell, you had the atheist and the agnostic, a couple of people that told Bill, even Dr. Silkworth himself said not to lead with that religious experience. So I think in the effort for Bill to get more people to come into the AA for this to be more palatable, more digestible.
Sell it.
To sell it. He was a salesman.
Sell it.
Yeah. He was toning down the fact that it was a religious experience. He wanted it to be a spiritual experience. He started getting away from, and that's what's happened in AA. A lot of people come in and they don't need this religious experience. It's become, I would say, a lot more psychological. Is that what you think happened? I mean,
right.
In a nutshell.
Yeah. Psychological. And with him, like you said, it's like we talked about, I think it was last week, in the car business. They used to skip over this, and then put him in the back, and then the finance guy will close him down. The guy doesn't like the car. He doesn't like the color. He doesn't like the price. Nothing about it. He likes him, but they skip through the process and throw him in the back. And then this guy closes him down. And kind of what Alcoholics Anonymous is now. Get him in on the fellowship. It's nice. Everybody's happy. Everybody, not diving down in anything real, anything about, don't tell them. But what was just recently, people apologizing about saying the word God in the media. It's like, I gotta almost like I'm apologizing, but I need to mention God. It's like, listen, that's what the whole thing's about. The whole thing's about that. Maybe we should tell people that up front. Maybe we wouldn't have a 10% or less recovery rate.
Yeah, well, they used to. They'd have them they had to get on their knees and give their life actually to Jesus Christ before they could even
which
come
is
to
extreme. That
yes.
We're not even asking for that.
Yes,
just
exactly.
the God, not being atheist, or the book where you can be atheist or agnostic. What's that pamphlet?
Yeah.
I'm about my head wanted
the
to
God
explode.
word. That's where AA's come to now. The God word.
The God word. That atheists and agnostics are part of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is true. The membership bar is extremely low. All you have to have is a desire to stop drinking. You can be a member. I'm a member. The whole program is designed to bring about enlightenment and about a transformation. It's all about God. It's all about the relationship with God. So they've turned it into a religion. Now it's religious. Now it's not a relationship. And that people. So let me just tell you, and this might make people. I don't know if it makes them mad or not. If you're atheist agnostic, you're not in the program of alcohol. You're not in the basic tech. You're not in how the program was originally designed. You're not having. Listen, you can't be enlightened. You can't. In the sense that we've entered into the world of the spirit. How are we going to become a vital sixth sense? It talks about communication with God, not only talking to God, but God talking back to you. So there's a communication going on. It's talking about enlightenment. Plain and simple is what it's talking about. A relationship that I'm transformed, supernatural. None of that's happening. So a lot of that Parkhurst and all them guys, they all tell the half. Well, first of all, they tell half the story.
Well, they got drunk. Both of them got drunk.
Exactly.
That's the part that they always leave out is that both of them got drunk. And actually, if you read Hank's story in the big book, it talks about him hitting his knees, the cold floor. What are these tears running down my face? He had an experience of God. And same thing with Jim Burwell. He went off and he got drunk and he ended up picking up a Gideon Bible and reading the Bible, and I think he got sober after that. So they love to say, the atheist and the agnostic that influenced the program. Well, both of them got drunk, so it didn't even work for them. And later Bill wrote a letter in Liberty magazine saying, we have to go back to the take it or leave it attitude, that this, here's the thing that I don't know what you see, but even in this, the God word, Bill's talking about there being a common problem. But the big book Alcoholics Anonymous says that the cement that binds us together is that we have a common problem and we have a common solution. Well, go to an AA meeting today and see if there's a common solution. You often hear, well, this is my program and I have my well, there is not my program, there's the program. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is to have an essential psychic change, to have a relationship with God that can revolutionize your thinking, your attitude, your towards life. And what I see happening is Bill did exactly what he wanted to do. He raised the bottom. Okay, a lot of people are coming in and they are not. The big book differentiates the real alcoholic and ex-problem drinkers. I think there's a lot of ex-problem drinkers in AA, not real alcoholics. They don't have to have the essential psychic change. William James talks about it. 2 different types of spiritual experience. There's one that is from discipline. Okay, and there's one from a total surrender, and a lot of people in AA are coming in and they're getting sober through self-discipline. They're not broken to the point where they need a God, and they can still manage, and they're coming in AA and they're managing and they're self-disciplined and they're working a program, and what's weird about it to me, I always think like it's almost like you're coming in, it's like the wolf in the hen house or something. I don't know. You're coming in AA, people that are very sick, broken people, and you have, I know myself when I share my story, sometimes I look out in the audience and people are making faces like, I don't know what she's got, but I'm glad I don't have what she has, because they never reached the places that I reached in their alcoholism. Sure. And they're sitting in the room, and you've had people like actually gasp, like, you drank again after that? It's like, yeah, I'm powerless over alcohol. I could not stop drinking. I was beyond human aid. The funny thing about it, too, is our book says that we couldn't recover on moral psychology. And when you take God out of it, what are you left with? You're left with moral psychology. It's so, I guess it's just a big difference of the two type of alcoholics in Alcoholics Anonymous, both living in there. And it's not the same solution for those people. Right. You've got one that needs this solution and one that doesn't, and so we don't have a common solution anymore. And I think it's causing a problem.
Well, you think it's a definite. It's people getting people sober. People don't get people sober. God gets people sober. Mm-hmm. God transforms lives. It's like they're taking, like I said, all the juice out of it, all the exciting, all the magic, and they're wrapping themselves up in it. So it's all about. I go back to Gladiator when he goes, the time for honoring yourself will soon come to an end. It's a lot about, what you did for me and the sponsor. Even when we get into the meeting, if Bill and Bob didn't get together, we wouldn't have are you kidding me? Do you know how stupid that sounds to me? I mean, to me personally, that if Bill and Bob didn't get together, we wouldn't have Alcoholics Anonymous. That's ridiculous. Yeah. Bob would have took, we joke, but Sesame Street, he could have took Bert and Ernie, put them together, and he could have made Alcoholics Anonymous. The cry from the people came out, and God answered. It's a God program, but yet we're taking all the credit. Anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions. And what does that mean? It means it's the principles, it's the love, it's that. That is what's going on here, not the people, the personalities. We stand on the thing. Come on, man. It's so it's a lot of that, and but it started to veer off right away because a lot of those people were in his ear. A lot of those people were, and so what did they start doing? They started watering it down. If you water something down too much, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. Well, I'm 30 years sober. I've been sober 30 years. How many people do I know are still, some of them are in churches, some of them have moved on, whatever, but how many people do I know are still here 30 years later? It's incredible how many people have gone out at different increments and maybe come back. Maybe they are back. Listen, I don't hardly know anybody that's been here 30 years. I mean, there's not a lot of them. There's some people that, it's like, what is it? You can keep a monkey away from bananas and it's not a big deal. You know what I'm saying? It's really not a big deal. It's like a Rotary Club. They could probably stay sober. They could have probably went to Smart Recovery. They could have, who knows what they could have. But for me, I have to be diligent. I have to have a psychic chance. I have to keep on being transformed. I have to keep on surrendering. There's a big deal that has to happen. A miracle. For me, it's a miracle that I'm still sober, and everybody wants to take the miracle out.
Well, and it almost seems like that's the minority voice in AA now, 100%. And it's funny because I was at a meeting last week, several meetings recently, probably because I'm doing the history and I'm looking at it. It's very clear the distinction now, and I went to a meeting last week and the guy was sharing about, he said that there's a story in the big book, it says I stopped in time, and he said I could see the bottom, I could see it coming, and so I stopped before I hit it. And he said, and he said, so then the meeting all went on that vein. They were talking about, that they saw the bottom and they stopped before they hit it, and so the feeling, and so this guy said, some people in here, it's like whose dog barks louder, like we're all trying to outdo each other with our stories or whatever. And And it just struck me that he said that. And then another guy shared, and he's like, yeah, these dramatic stories about prostitution and addiction. And so the vein of the meeting would almost set up that if you were a real alcoholic who saw the bottom and fell right through it, that your story is dramatic, that it is maybe the loudest story, that you should shut up, that somehow you shouldn't speak up, that that's somehow offending people or upsetting people in AA. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but the problem with this is those people are full of shit. I listen to people over and over and over. I mean, the idea that you're going to die and you stopped is kind of a high bottom drug. I mean, I'm just telling you. Comparing this to myself, that's high bottom.
Most of us died, came back, and got high again.
That's a reason. That's a reason, a good reason to quit. Okay, that's different than a guy, and they'll talk about how terrible they were and how hopeless they were. Listen, if you're hopeless, that means you're going to be talking about God, and you're going to be in love with God, and you're going to be grateful to God, and you're going to have all that's going to happen for you because that's the only way you're sitting here or standing here. They talk about how good, or the people like you shared sometimes, well, you know, we all know how we got drunk, so let me just tell you about sobriety. It's like, first of all, I want to know where you come from, you know, like right, if you come from where I come from and now you're sober and you got a business and a house and a wife, and that's incredible for a guy like me, you know what I'm saying?
Well, when they were saying about the dog barking, it's like, my story isn't about, you know, how terrible or how wonderful Jennifer is. It's about how wonderful God is. And I can't tell you how wonderful God is unless I tell you, and first of all, how bad I was, what God's done in my life and what I am now. That's the whole beauty of the program. And how am I going to get that across unless I tell you exactly what I was like before this, so that you can see the impossibility of me living the life that I have today. Of myself, I'm nothing, the Father doeth the work is not a slogan or a bumper sticker for me. It's literal. Like, I can't have this job, this husband, this marriage, anything without God. That's alcoholism for me.
Exactly. And a lot of people kind of, they say how bad they are, but then they talk about temporal things, people, things, and you can hear in their conversations like, okay, you were bad, well, you ain't that bad, because you're still got a lot of self involved here. You got a lot of dependency upon self, and self over here, and sponsors and groups, and you're religious, you're not spiritual, you're not connected, you don't have a relationship, you haven't been transformed. And people have been transformed. Listen, we know, and we know who has been and who hasn't. It's not like we're walking around with sticks with red things on the end of them like, I'm blind and stuff. I know the truth.
What's the saying? It's many know the lyrics, few know the melody. And when you've had a spiritual experience, you can hear it in the meetings, and you don't hear a lot of it.
Well, we go to a meeting where we have quite a few people, more, I would say, you know, we have a good mix, which is great. Listen, it's not like I'm saying also like you have to be this. The thing I have usually a problem with is you're saying you don't have to have this, just like that clip we played about, and you're standing outside the door, you're not in the kingdom of God, you're selling everybody else, they don't have to be in the kingdom of God. That's what I don't like. Or you're posing as if you're the guy like me. You're not like me. I'm a hopeless alcoholic. And then they talk and it's like, no, you're not hopeless, because you talk about people, places, and things, and that's your sobriety. That's not, if once you go from hopeless alcoholic, if you're not starting to talk about God and transformation and what a miracle it is, something's not. That's the connection. It's like a guy, we were going back and forth. I said, well, listen, I can tell you where my bottom was about my recovery. I had a bright light experience. Anybody who's had that kind of experience, like a Bill Smith, that means you're so low that God has to pull you out. When Carl Jung talks to Roland Hazard, the only thing that you can do, only thing that's going to happen for you, the best psychology, what's he say? The best psychology known to man was Carl Jung was one of them, right? And what did he say to him? He said, you need a
religious conversion. He said, it's outside my scope, because he's, you know, medicine and science. He said, it's a phenomena to me, but, and what did Roland Hazard said? He said, well, good, because I'm a religious man. I go to church. And he said, it's not that. It's not about going to church. It's not. This is a religious experience. It's bigger than that, you know. So Roland Hazard went home and actually found the Oxford group and started going to the Oxford group. And that's what he said. You got to get in a religious environment and kind of open yourself up for this experience to happen. That's the other thing. I think that is an environment that we're talking about God, that we're talking about transformation, that we're talking about being reborn, that if you're, where he said you've got to put yourself in a religious atmosphere, it used to be, they used to sit and read the Bible. They'd all get together. They'd listen to God. They'd talk. They'd meditate. It was a very spiritual, if you want to say spiritual rather than religious, environment.
Well, it's become more doing. We got a chapter, it says into action. It's more about the doing than the actual surrender. The absolute coming to a place that in your life where you're like, because it seems to me, well, not even seems to me, this is kind of how it's always worked out for me. It's the condition of my heart. It's the condition of how I address God and my failings and where I've come to my life and my surrender. And then God takes it. And I've listened to, it was actually last week, it was something for Billy Graham. And he says, you must repent to see the kingdom of God. Okay, that's different than I'm a sick person trying to get well, this, that. No, do you understand that I have conceded my innermost self, that I am nothing? At some point, now I'm not saying that I always kept that, because as soon as I get going, I congratulate, we go off on tangents, but like Bill did the same thing. As soon as he got going, he's like, oh, I can build on this AA thing. I think I can make it better than God. I think that's the common thing in the world, in the left, especially on the political left. It's we're better than God. We know better than God. We are progressive. We will make this better than God intended it to be, and that every time is failure. Failure has unintended consequences. That's what's happened in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're going to make this better than God. Bill started right away doing that. We're going to make this thing better than God designed it for. That tradition and traditional things and how it was originally intended is for some reason not, well, you could use the word woke, but not progressive enough. It's not intelligent enough. It's not good enough. So basically they look at people like Jesus Christ and they say they make Jesus out to be, they feel like they're nicer than Jesus. Like if you look at how Jesus talked to some people, he was calling guys idiots. He was looking right at him saying, listen, you're a hypocrite. You're this. I mean, he got crucified for a reason. He got crucified because he wasn't just sitting back like mamby-pamby. And that's what the mamby-pamby, well, it's okay. You can believe whatever you want. All this kind of stuff is just not true. It's basically what you're doing is lying to these people. You're telling them something that's not true. They go down the steps. You take them down the steps to a fifth step, and all of a sudden they back up and they're out of here. This shit don't work. Why? Because they're not even doing what was intended. So a lot of it's just garbage. It's a lot of lies.
It's funny because when I read the literature too, it was saying that there's more than one way to get to the one true God, but the destination was the one true God, and that's what's happened. Their destination is not the one true God, and in AA anymore.
Right. And that's what's gone on and on and on. It's a lot of these guys were in his ear. I get that, but I do that in my own life. It's like, okay, God gives me something. What do I do? It's like, oh, let me tweak it, maybe a little bit. And that's what they did to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now you have most of the people in there are not having transformations. They're not having God relationships. They're all a lot of them are religious. They're having
They'd laugh at you if you said that, though, because they're all against religion. So you're saying AA is religious, and they're in there. Anytime you talk about God, they're like, AA is not religious, and you're saying AA is religious.
Right. It's exactly, because when I mention Jesus, which I don't ruffle people's feathers, because if you say Jesus, they'll go like this in a meeting. They'll because I usually say that's not the Jesus I'm talking about, the one that's freaking you out right now. But if you say the word Jesus, they immediately say, this isn't or they would say that's a religion. Jesus Christ was not a religion. It was a pathway. It was a relationship. It was a way of life. Just like the big book Alcoholics Anonymous is a way of life, a way of connecting with God, being transformed, and having God in your everyday events. And they were talking about being an avocation. If you read the first thing, it says an avocation. Many years ago, I was in a meeting. And this guy, he became a pastor, but he said, avocation, what is avocation? It's a hobby. Yeah. They were talking about it not being the mainstay of your life, that the program Alcoholics Anonymous was not the main thing of your life. It was a segue to live in the community, to touch lives everywhere. It was about being transformed and then being transformed everywhere you go. Here and now, this is the main focal point. Basically, people are AA is their God. I'll tell you right now, people will be, if they stop the program Alcoholics Anonymous, they absolutely think that they'll drink. because they believe that AA keeps them sober. AA didn't get me sober, and AA doesn't keep me sober.
Well, a lot of them did drink during COVID when meetings weren't available.
Well, because they're sober on AA. I'm sober on God. God got me sober, and he used the program. He used the tools. He used people. He did. But the primary thing is God. It's almost like when you go through the steps. If you're going through the steps, and they'll have a fifth step experience, so they say, you know, I felt like I really belonged in AA, which is fine. But that's not what the thing is in the big book. It says we landed with our Creator, walking hand in hand with our Creator on the broad highway of the universe. And then it goes into the sixth step, and it goes, we stay at home. And it says we go home, and we thank God from the bottom of our heart for knowing him better. That's what's happening there, not my sponsor.
Well, it's funny because C.S. Lewis always talks about if you do a long math equation, you get the wrong answer. You can't just go back a couple steps. You got to go all the way back to the beginning. So they're not having the step 3 experience. They're not having the 5, 7 because
not having step 1 experience. It always comes down to step 1.
Yes.
We were going to be talking more about step 1.
Well, that's why I'm bringing us back to that because this whole path was to the one true God. What happened? So you got, everybody in Bill's ear, people that ended up getting drunk, okay? And he raised the bottom. People are coming in before they're powerless, before they're unmanageable. The guy said it. I saw the bottom. I stopped in time. He can still manage.
And it's affected how we deal with people. Because we got a lot of guys that aren't really ready. So what do? They say, okay, well, what an example we had in our meet where the one guy was talking, and I love the guy, and he's of a certain way. I mean, he's obviously very much more educational variety, elongated, and how he works with his guys, and it's one thing, but he's like, we were in We Agnostics, and he's like, well, remember, we're in We Agnostics, and they haven't defined God, which none of that is true. We Agnostics, just like Sandy Beach said, We Agnostics, that chapter is to convince you not to be agnostic anymore.
Correct.
The whole thing is to tell you, listen, this ain't going to work unless you get a God in your life. That's what the whole thing's about. So it's funny because they don't really have a step 1 experience like you said. So if I'm not really powerless and my life really isn't unmanageable, then why would I need a manager?
Yeah.
I don't need a manager. I'm going to manage. So what they do is this is what happens. They start going through the steps. They engineer the steps. They do them the way they're going to do them with another person.
And they
There's
talk
no
about
surrender
it
involved.
They're
they
picking
skimmed over the
winners and
surrender.
losers.
Well,
they're picking
they
who
skimmed over the surrender spot.
Yeah.
The surrender spot is where, and then they talk about relationship with God, and they say, well, it's 4 through 9 and step back here. Well, let me just tell you, for a guy like me, okay, a hopeless drunk, the idea that I saw that I was hopeless and that I had it's called, and they define it as a moment of clarity. I remember hearing a guy who told my story. It was a guy, he was son of a preacher, a black guy, and he was up in the city, and he was on the street corner, Detroit, I think he was, and he heard God speak to him, and he said, in that moment, I saw myself. I saw me. He said that was, he cried out from his heart, and God said, look, this is who you are. This is how powerless and how much you need me, and how unmanageable, how screwed you are, how crazy and how screwed you really are. That was from the very beginning, God showing me that. Then in the third step, it talks about 63. I'm just saying how they go with the thing. Now I've made a decision to turn my will and my life over to care of God. That's a huge decision. It's not like something to skim over. They're like, oh, yeah. And this is how they go over it. Well, then, you're not really, and just skimming. Well, they're not having the experience because it's not being done on the level it needs to be done on. It has to be it has to be on a gut level of that kind of experience. Or you're going to wind up in AA, which is fine, but you're not going to wind up in God's hands, correct?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what's happening at step 1, too, is that people come in, they're not seeing themselves as, in fact, at that same meeting where the guy said, I saw my bottom and I stopped before I hit it, another guy at the end of the meeting shared he was in a lot of pain. He'd been sober for 30 years, and he said, a lot of you people are full of shit. He just has gone through a really rough time, and he said, a lot of people talk a lot of stuff in here, but when the rubber meets the road, the people in here, he felt let down by AA.
Oh, of
They
course.
didn't have the depth, the weight and depth. They say the message for the alcoholic has to have depth and weight. And a lot of people in there, they saw the bottom, they stopped in time. They don't have the depth and weight. They've never been powerless, like Kobe Bryant talks about, where they have a cross they can't pick up. They could still pick it up and walk themselves across the line. They didn't need God to do it. And, a lot of those people come into AA, and the language is different from when I got sober. When I got sober, they said, sit down, shut up, take the cotton out of your ear, stick it in your mouth. These days, when the newcomers come in, there's a lot of like, you're sick, not bad, well, I was a good mother, I was a good father, and the guy shared that at the end of the meeting. He goes, you all sound like you're such great people and you're doing such great things. How can you be a great person and an alcoholic? No alcoholic in their cups drinking is a good wife, a good father, a good husband. You can't be. You're so selfish and self-centered when you're drinking. So I don't know that they're having the experience of seeing themselves as they really are, just that I had a drinking problem, and other than that, like I say, other than drinking and smoking crack, I'm a well-adjusted adult, I mean, but these two things can't be simultaneously true. So there is something that happens when and they come in and they're clapping for him and giving them chips and telling them how amazing they are. And I'm not saying anything again, because that newcomer got upset when I was sharing this. I'm not saying beat the newcomer up or be mean to, nobody's saying that. But you have a window of opportunity when you come in for God to really show you yourself, the truth of yourself, what you become and what you're doing. And I think it's a valuable piece of the step one
100%.
experience.
It's rip the Band-Aid off. And then they go, this is so funny when they go, you're the most important person in the room. And I'm always thinking to myself, because the new person is the most important person in the room. And I get that. I mean, we're focused on helping them, and we love them, and we want them. But of course, and we all have a heart for that. And you'll hear some of the best shares at that point for that person. But the truth of the matter is, you've been the most important person in the room in every room you've ever been in. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. I mean, it's almost like the opposite. It's like, okay, now we got to really realize ego, because the 12 steps are ego, deflation, depth. And how the old guys, like you're talking about, that was their progressive way, in a way, of telling you, okay, you don't know nothing, shut up. We know how to stay sober. You don't, which, believe it or not, again, I'll almost promise you that the recovery rate was better then than it is now. Then appeasing on the left, they do it in society. Chamberlain did it with Hitler. I can go through course of history of appeasement to anything. Appeasing the alcoholic, appeasing always is bad. It never works out. It's always better to be straightforward and honest, to stand up, be firm, and tell the truth and be authentic. Always works out better than appeasement. Every single time, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he started doing. That's what the big book, that's exactly what he started doing. It's like, Bill had such a heart for the alcoholic.
Exactly.
He
and
got
we
soft.
all do. Exactly. I know. I've done it in my own sobriety,
exactly.
I have compassion for him and stuff.
I mean, listen to the wives.
Exactly.
He wrote to the wives. It's like,
no matter, if he's having sex with the girl next to you, just ignore it. Don't worry about it. It's, don't be mean
don't be a nag.
Right? A wet blanket.
I mean, he goes overboard because
exactly.
So emotionalism gets in there. Man gets involved.
Yeah.
And men screw up shit. We always have.
Exactly.
It's always, we get a good thing and we have to tweak it, and we have to, now it's way over here. And then what is the results? And that's what we want to be. We want to be the results of it.
Yeah. But it's kind of funny, because even in my own life, when I was young, I remember hearing like conservative Christians. I'm like, oh my God, they're so rigid and so, and what's the old time, conservative with my money and liberal with my, you just don't want to be a certain way. It doesn't sound, especially to the alcoholic, it doesn't sound attractive. It sounds so rigid but then you get older and you're like, damn, those people were right, because they always said, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile, because you can't appease the ego. You give the ego an inch, it's taking a mile.
Exactly. And conservatives want to conserve the original thing. It's the same thing in society. What they do with Charlie Kirk, I showed that clip where Charlie Kirk said what was the original America and stuff like that. What they do is, and they do it in Alcoholics Anonymous just as well, it's like we're trying to conserve the Christian. Okay, so our society was built, it was Christian values. He goes through all that, and we had that clip where how America started, what its roots and all that. Well, people say, well, then they go, well, they were slave owners. They were, all this stuff that they do. Now, if you really break it down, they couldn't get an anonymous vote on them. It was 11 states or whatever. It was 11 out of the 12. They couldn't get, and they had to, line by line, they had to get everybody to vote on it. That's why they were trying to get rid of it back then. Believe it or not. Slavery, yes, yeah. from the very beginning. Abolitionist movement, of course, was a Christian movement. Yeah. That was, of course, the anti-slave movement was all. But history is retold. Same thing in Alcoholics Anonymous. History is retold. Oh, we got Burrow or whatever his name is. He was an atheist. They retell the history to lie. Yes. What they're doing is lying to you.
Yeah, they're saying there was an atheist and agnostic, and they did fine, and they didn't. They got drunk, and it's the same thing, right? The Christians were against slavery.
Well, this was a Christian age, and they had slaves, and all them guys were basically old scumbags, is what they were. That's how they portray them. But then if you break it down and you start really looking at history, like these guys they call it something pill. They do it in a bill. They'll put a secret pill in there. They'll put it in there, and they know that it's going to explode later. Well, that's what they put in there when they said we create all men equal, and they knew that was going to unravel things. A lot of those guys knew that was going to unravel it down the road. They couldn't get the votes then, but they put in all men are created equal, and about the God. That's why they put that in there. So later on, it was all going to unravel. So those guys weren't as bad as we think. Obviously, our society has lifted up more people out of poverty than any other society. Alcoholics Anonymous was the most successful thing for alcoholics. Those guys will argue with me about, nobody was getting sober. People have been getting sober since man first crushed grapes. Trust me. God's been casting out demons, not as organized as this is, and maybe not in the numbers, but there's a lot of people have been. Now we're back to numbers. I would argue that more people are sober in churches than they are in Alcoholics Anonymous. They're certainly having a better connection. Because in my area, I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but people are very much about they're sober on AA, they're sober on the people on A, they're sober on it's not in the spiritual realm. They're all talking about the physical realm. They're not talking about the spiritual realm, or very rarely, and what a transformation that is. And they have to lie about the past. Like the one guy was sharing, he goes, well, Jim Burrow, this one was an atheist or that one was agnostic. No, those guys got drunk. Those guys came to Christ later, tell the whole story, but they take everything out of context.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that they do now. Let me just get a snippet here so I can tell this story. You can take anything in a little sentence or this or that and make it into whatever you want it to be, and that's what they're doing. Alcoholics Anonymous has 100% been like that. And the real...
Well, and the bad part about it is that, again, like I said, it's where it ends up is now it's the God word. They've taken the Lord's Prayer out of the World Service. They had the World Convention, and they took the Lord's Prayer out of it. God's now reduced to the God word. So what is the future of the program if now it is basically what? The Rotary Club with a bunch of, basically, well, I guess.
Since man first started crushing grapes, we go back to that. They've been worshiping other things as soon as. But look what happened with Moses. They took him out of the thing. They liberate him. They got him out of Egypt. He goes up in the mountain. They're making a golden calf. Immediately, they start worshiping other things than God. It's like and listen, it's part of the human condition. I get it. You got to make the connection that it's not only plausible that that's what's going on. It's obviously the results are that, but it's not a stretch in no way. It's like just pick up history. It happened every time in every situation.
Yeah, and I guess the reason that it's been upsetting is, I go and I speak at the jail, and a lot of times those and again, you got to get over it. If it's life or death, you've got to get over it. But a lot of times they'll go into the rooms, and they're real alcoholics, and they don't feel welcome there. They don't feel the identification isn't there. It's changing.
Oh, absolutely. They're shunned. Well, it's back to the whole thing. I'm not in the kingdom of God, and neither do you have to go there. It would have to. The problem with it is, listen, a lot of people, 40 years, 30 years, all kinds of increments, have built their sobriety not on God. It's not built on God. It's built on worldly things. So there's a card there. So if you start yanking on that card a little bit, the whole house is going to fall down. So they have to protect that. So now we have people that are standing outside. That was the Pharisees. When we went back to that clip, they were standing outside the kingdom of God saying, you don't have to go in there. Well, why were they telling them that? Because they would be exposed. See, they'll be exposed. They're covering up their own thing because they built their whole sobriety. They've been able to do it too. A real alcoholic isn't able to do it. So he's probably dead somewhere or in a church somewhere, but he ain't in that. Or, you know what I mean? He's having a different experience.
Yeah, well, and that's part of it too. You know, some of the people I've sponsored, and you ask them, you know, well, what have you been doing with these people in AA? What does it look like when you're doing the steps? And they're not leading them to God. They're not talking to them about God. They're not talking about them. And these girls are getting drunk. And, you know, I guess it is a little bit of a fear. It is a little bit of a, you know, that, but, you know, ultimately I know God's in control and you know, people will find who they're supposed to find or whatever. Because part of me wants to blame AA and the people in the program, you know, that they're not doing the program. But, you know, they're not killing people either.
No, the only thing I can do is tell the truth and expose what I believe, you know, like I'm doing here. This is what I believe. This is my experience. This is what I see is going on. You take it for what you want. Listen, it's all going to work out the way, however, you know, God's going to work through a lot of it.
Yes.
He will work through a lot. Like when you say people are dead, they probably wind up in a church. Some of them get sober right with us, you know, through all the bullshit. I mean, I was asked not to come back to an Alcoholics Anonymous. They didn't want me back. I mean, you know, that's where I come from, and I got sober.
But I guess
they'd see me coming. They would they'd move. They'd get up in their seat and move, and I'm sober. So I got sober because of the power of God, not because of people. And I was grateful, so grateful. And God showed me as soon as I had that bright light experience, he'd take me around. Guy with 50 years, guy with 30 years, the old guy, what's his name, was running the meeting. He'd take me to each one of them, and I'd hear him. God'd say, see, he don't know what the hell he's talking about. Go over here. You know, I mean, fear-based, like, don't follow these men. Don't follow these men. Follow me. That's why the book is set up the way it is. That's why in the end of the book it says, we realize we know only a little. They knew that God was the one who's going to be the judge of your sex life and all that stuff. But it's the step one problem is the issue. I'm God, and I need to decide that I'm not God. You know, it's like I'm God. On step one, I'm God. Unless I admit that I'm powerless and I don't have the power, then I believe I'm God. And that's why in the third step it says we had to stop playing God. Why is it saying in the third step we had to stop playing God? I said to one guy, I said, I thought I was God when I got here. And see? And God speaks. I thought I was God when I got here, and it's funny because without you admitting that you're not God, that you don't have the power, that you can't manage, you're never going to move away from yourself. Mm-hmm. You're going to be stuck in self, and there's a lot of ways to manipulate that. There's a lot of ways to cheat that, and if you're not that bad, you're going to be able to, because the truth of the matter is you might have a little bit of a self left, you know, where you can do stuff. I had no self, man. I was sitting there I fell apart. I was dead. It's completely dead. There was nothing holding me up when I got here except for God.
Yeah. And I guess the part, just because like a lot of these women, especially coming from the jail, they're so beaten down. I guess you just want them to know that if you're an alcoholic of this type, you're not going to be able to get sober on the fellowship and that's all nice, but it's not a power strong enough to do what needs to be done inside of you for you to stay here for the long haul. So you just, you know, they distinguish the different type of alcoholics in the book for a reason.
Mm-hmm. And the William James thing that you read.
Exactly.
The twice dead or the twice live.
Exactly. The twice born. The
twice born. And it's funny that on the third step it says when they go into the third step, you feel the fear, reborn. You lose the fear today, tomorrow, the year after. We were reborn. Talks about being reborn. Same thing here.
Yeah. James concluded that there are two types of spiritual change. One is the gradual transformation, slow improvement through discipline, or the sudden transformation, a dramatic shift under surrender. James observed something very important. The most broken people often experience the most dramatic transformation. They were the ones who truly surrendered. Step one says we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Our lives have become unmanageable. James saw that real surrender happens only when control is completely abandoned, not partial surrender, total surrendered. James stayed intellectually cautious. He said the source might be God, a higher spiritual reality, or a deeper level of the mind, but he admitted something important. The transformation was real and observable, and it produced lasting change. By the end of his life, James did lean towards believing that the human mind connects to a larger spiritual consciousness. So, by the end of his life, James did believe in, in God, maybe not in the traditional
and the consciousness, it mentioned consciousness there. That's what, when Jen says all the time, she corrected me at one point. I said, what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. What you used to be like, what happened to you, what you're like now. They're talking about consciousness, my shift in consciousness. So like, when you're talking about, was it Byron Katie, whatever, said, you look over at the corner of your eye and it looks like a snake, so you jump. But once you realize it's a rope, it can never be a snake again. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, a true transformation, a psychic change. They talk about the essential psychic change. Well, unless you surrender, this is a supernatural process. What I get upset about, I guess, is more the people that haven't had the process, haven't had a supernatural, and are posers, basically. They're posing as they are. They're telling you all kinds of stuff, and they're full of shit. That's what the truth of the matter is. They say, how can you tell alcoholics full of shit? His mouth's moving, and that's a lot of times that's the case. Unfortunately, with many, many years of sobriety, it's just a new way of being full of crap. Unless there's a surrender, unless there's a transformation, unless there's a God in their life, they're not authentic. It's always an actor. They're always acting a certain way. They're not actually who they are. And sometimes the guy that's not acting doesn't look as good as the guy that's acting. Some of the actors look really good, but that's not reality. That's not authenticity. And that does not bring about a recovery and a sustainable, ongoing. That's why they're going out. They're going out. Listen, they're going out at 5 years. They're going out at 7 years. They're going out at 20 years. They're going out at 15. They're not going from when they get into the grave. They're not transformed, and they're not staying that way, because what is a man does is not permanent. What God does is, So, anything else you got there about what
no,
it is?
just that he really specified the difference of the gradual improver. This type of person responds to discipline. They respond to education. They respond to therapy. The alcoholic of this type, it says no human power. So they're not going to respond to discipline. They're not going to respond to therapy or education. Right. He says these people are relatively psychologically integrated already. Their problems are real, but their personality isn't fundamentally divided. Exactly. The divided or the sick soul, these people experience something deeper. It's an intense inner conflict, shame, despair, inability to control themselves, repeated failure despite effort. James called them the twice born. Why? Because they often need a complete inner rebirth rather than gradual improvement.
Absolutely, 100%.
And that's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that the hard drinker, the book says that a hard drinker can stop when necessary. They can moderate if the reason's strong enough. Exactly. They can recover through discipline. That's basically what James is talking about the once born type. The real alcoholic, the big book says, the real alcoholic can't control drinking. They can't stay stopped. They can't rely on willpower. Eventually, they will return to alcohol. That mirrors James' twice born type. Their personality structure is completely different.
Exactly. And that's why they say there's come a time that there's no mental defense against the first drink. And those people, that could be at 7, 10, 12. That could be at whatever that time comes. If you don't have that connection, you don't have that relation, you haven't had that transformation, you're going to go to the wayside.
So that, I guess that's the point, is know the type of alcoholic you are.
Exactly. And this room for everybody.
Yes.
This room for everybody.
Yes.
I just don't like that some people are saying they are and they're not. And they say, I'm of the hopeless variety. And then they go on to tell you how unhopeless they are, in my opinion. Or not in my opinion, in my experience. Because I got the experience. I've experienced something. It's like I've experienced it. It's hard to be, it's like telling a blind man the color orange. I mean, it's like, I know what I can see. I'm alive. I know the difference. I know the difference. And because of God, not because I'm so wonderful, because I surrender to God. Listen, every day I got it. Every day I wake up, there I am.
And I guess we could talk more about that next week.
Absolutely.
Maybe, and even the language, the different language.
The different languages and how you can determine and decipher
what type you are and what you need, and how there's not a common solution. So just be very aware, if you are the real alcoholic, what that solution is for us. And it is available in AA.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, next week I'll be looking forward to seeing everybody. We're gonna, what is it like?
We're gonna like, comment, and share. We got a lot of likes and a lot of subscriptions. We need some comments.
Yeah, and remember, there's one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now.